Hello, my lovelies. Today we're talking about productivity and personality and creating routines that don't suck, no matter what your personality is. We'll be walking through some great ideas that support the principles that I teach in the Productivity by Personality course and the Whole Home Reset program, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And if anything in this podcast resonates with you, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. For those who are new to the podcast, when I talk about personalities, communication, and relationships, I use the DISC personality model of behavior and refer to people as D or driven, I or inspired, S or supportive, and C or cautious. You can find links to take your own personality assessment in the show notes or on the homepage of Moving Toward Better. I was struggling with this podcast until I saw a video by a creator that I usually enjoy watching. He tends to be very supportive of women in general, especially women that are bullied online and not treated well. But the video today was about women who, in his words, need constant reassurance that we're okay in our relationship. He goes on to say that he will not be calling or texting while he's at work because he's a professional. And if someone wants to be in a relationship with him, they have to do things his way or he's out, because a woman's need for reassurance is not as important as his drive to achieve his goals. And that, my friends, is the statement of a high D person who may or may not be out of balance. As we always do, we're going to start with the D personality. So this video is perfect for this discussion. Like the driven man in the video, women who are driven have similar values. When they're working, they detest being interrupted. And if you do it too often, they're most certainly going to let you know about it. This is because a driven person knows what they want to accomplish in a day, a week, a month, and longer. And if you mess with their plan, it can get ugly. But these are also the people who spend years succeeding financially only to find out that they've sacrificed the very people they thought they were succeeding for, or sacrificing the relationship with those people. There's a reason there's a cliche in movies of the old man, typically, living in the giant house with no one around him. For a driven person, succeeding in their chosen profession and building wealth often comes easily to them, much easier than building relationships, because they can succeed in business by checking off one thing after another. And other than determination and some occasional finesse, it's a relatively emotionless endeavor. That appeals to a driven person, especially in their profession and where money is concerned. That's not to say that a driven person is not emotional. It's just that love and vulnerability is more challenging for them than it is for the other personality types. So what in the world does this have to do with routines? Well, routines, no matter whether it's in business or at home, come naturally to the driven personality. And they like to get through them as quickly as possible. But here's where life can get really sweet for the driven person. If they can make sure that they're spending time with their people and make that part of their routine and engage in activities that everyone enjoys, they're going to find that they have more than they ever thought possible in terms of enjoying the family. This is why meal times can be so important. If you're busy, and if you're in the US, I know you're busy, and you take that meal time to take a breath and connect, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but that few minutes of connection can change everything for you and create bonds that last a lifetime. If you can't do it every night, find at least one night a week to connect. I promise you won't regret it. When my kids were all teenagers, that became Sunday evening. That was usually the day with no practices or games, especially late in the day. And my kids mostly worked retail, so we scheduled dinner after closing time. And then on the weeks that they were too busy, we sometimes had a car picnic or a weekend breakfast. And yes, it took work to schedule it, but again, it was worth it. In my course, The Whole Home Reset, I include a master meal planner that makes planning meals easy and gives you more time to focus on the family rather than cooking an elaborate meal or getting takeout for the umpteenth time this month. Then you're saving money and building relationships and doing it efficiently and effectively. Moving on to the I personality. The idea of routines probably kind of makes your skin crawl. Trust me, I know this, but if you want to succeed in life, routines are necessary. I know that makes you go, ugh, right? But the good news is that you are great at finding the fun. And when you use that superpower to make your routines fun, you can accomplish so much so quickly, it's gonna make your head spin. When I was younger and my third child was born with extraordinary medical needs, I knew I had to get my stuff together so that he could have the best chance at a healthy life. Before his arrival, things were pretty much loosey goosey around our home, and that worked pretty well for us. But this child needed medication at specific times and a different environment than we had at the time. The house wasn't horrible, but it certainly wasn't perfect by a long shot, so I got to work. To make meds easier, I got a pretty platter and set the meds on them where I would see them multiple times as I walked past. This was before I had a smartphone, so this was a constant reminder for me to make sure my son got his meds on time since I didn't have a way to set multiple alarms. To help with the house, I would have phone conversations with friends and loved ones while I cleaned. This was also a time before texting was free, so talking was the preferred way of communicating. Long before this, I had a friend I would talk to every weekend, usually while we were getting ready to go out. And while we chatted, we'd clean our homes. AirPods would have been quite welcome at the time. But both of us got a lot accomplished while we chatted. I also later on joined a chat room to help me get my home in order, and we would work for 15 to 25 minutes in a half an hour space. Then we would check in and share what we accomplished. That's where I truly learned the meaning of the magic of 15 minutes. And if you follow the Moving Toward Better Facebook page, you've seen that magic in pictures, and it is amazing. That may also be a future podcast or blog post, so stay tuned for that. But the thing is, it took me a while to realize that all that I learned from my home actually also applied to my business. And I do some things very differently than other people. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. First, I write my podcast outlines and I script them with music on. Sometimes I listen to ambient music, especially when I'm struggling with focus. There's great focus music on YouTube, by the way. But even on a good day, I play music with words that shuts out the ambient noise in my home and it lets me focus on the content. I also co-work or body double regularly and I love it. Essentially, we get on a call, chat for a few minutes, and then we set to work. If you're people oriented, you might have to give someone permission to curtail your love of conversation. But when you do that, it's gold. And it can be as simple as, okay, I need to get to work now. There you go. I get more accomplished in that hour or two, depending on the day and the group, than I sometimes do in an entire day when I'm on my own. I also find that corded headphones keep me tethered to my desk and require me to think about getting up. Whereas if I'm wearing my wireless earbuds, it's easy to wander away from my work. These may seem more like hacks than routines, but the fact that I put on headphones nearly every time I sit down at my desk, whether I'm listening to something or not, signals my brain that it's time for the routine of work to start. And for another quick tip, stay away from your email in the morning. I know that's going to be difficult to do, but trust me, it's a game changer for those who struggle with focus and who really want to be creative. Now let's talk about the S personality. The supportive personality is probably the person that struggles with routines the most because they always put their people first, sometimes to their own detriment. Being an ISD personality, I struggle with this mightily because I adore my people. And especially when my life was fully focused on being a stay-at-home mom, I truly struggled to create routines until they were absolutely necessary, like I said before, especially since I didn't understand the value of routines. And it might not be what you think. You see, when you're task oriented, you're naturally drawn to routines. When you're people oriented, you're naturally drawn to people. And as a young mom, I could lose the entire day just being engaged with my children. Then I would have this huge mess at the end of the night when I was exhausted, and that would make me resentful of the very children I spent the whole day enjoying. If you're people oriented, you know exactly what I mean. It's a vicious cycle because you love hanging out with your children much more than cleaning and organizing. So the house slips and gets to the point where you're completely overwhelmed and you don't know where to start because it feels like everything needs attention because it does. The amazing thing I found out about routine that helped me get and keep my home in order is that routines actually give me more time to spend with my loved ones without resentment. I'm telling you, keep listening. Don't lose me here, okay? That was such a revelation. For my I part, the routines actually made it so that I could be spontaneous without guilt because I had a way to catch up or get back on track when we spent a day away from the home, or maybe a couple of days even. For the S part of me, it was a way for me to support my family in a way that showed them as well how to balance caring for a home with caring for loved ones. I know this may seem like a duh moment to some people, but for me, it was truly life changing. When my children were as young as 8, 5, and 2, during summer and break times, I would make a list of 10 to 12 age appropriate items to accomplish every day. We would decide after looking at the list who was doing which task, and then we would set a timer for 15 minutes and work towards finishing the tasks. As long as everybody worked for the entire 15 minutes, okay, 2-year-old got a little bit of a little bit of a break, but 2-year-olds with a duster are amazing. So we would work for the 15 minutes. We'd stop at the end, and I would add the things that didn't get finished to the top of the next day's list. Then we would go do something fun. It could be anything from going to the zoo or the local amusement park where we had season tickets to having a movie day or going to the library or the park, having a picnic. The truth is that my house at that time was never cleaner. And we had so much fun too. And I can tell you, I truly miss those days sometimes. Now, when it comes to work, you as an S personality may be the one that needs to leave the house, at least now and then, even if the reason you started your business was to spend more time with your family. One of the things that astounded me when I first started working from home was how much more I could accomplish than when I was in an office if there are no interruptions. Kids in the house means distractions and interruptions. So if you can set things up to have fewer distractions, great. Then you can accomplish tons. If that doesn't work, finding alternatives will save you so much time and frustration. I know women who work from home that get up an hour or two earlier than their children and get the bulk of their work done before the rest of the family stirs. Others work at night because their children get up as soon as somebody else stirs in the house and they can get an hour or two in after the kids go to bed. Others use school and or preschool time to get work done, and sometimes people hire someone to help them, a mother's helper, a babysitter, and that way they can go attend meetings or do work with someone else. It's a way for them to have someone in the house that helps them set the boundaries that the supportive personality sometimes struggles with. And it helps you get your work done too. Another person I worked with had several children, and she felt so guilty and overwhelmed about even the idea of getting a mother's helper. Now, understand, this is a woman who had her own business and she homeschooled. So, and her business was in her home. So she spent plenty of time with her kids. The overwhelm came with looking for a sitter. But after just a short conversation, we realized she had a teenaged high school neighbor who was also homeschooled, who was looking to make extra money and was within walking distance of her home. To make things even better, this same teenager had helped out with the older children while my client was in the hospital giving birth to her youngest. So she already knew her children liked the sitter. When I asked her, she's like, "Oh, they loved her." And I'm like, "So give them that fun time with her, and you can get your work done and you're going to be so much happier." The most difficult part then was for her getting over the guilt of needing a babysitter because for some reason, this homeschooling, business owning, multiple child mom, some of her kids with special medical needs and other needs thought she could or should be doing more. Oi, you know? Now, for the C personality, okay, you are the personality type that lives for routines and you love to think about them and tweak them and think about them and tweak them some more. But here's the question: are you actually doing them? It's interesting because I know people who struggle with executing routines, even with the C personality type, because they never quite feel like they're perfect. They're stuck in the planning phase, which they love, but they hesitate to actually implement their plan because they don't want to find out that the plan isn't perfect yet. I also know people who've overcome that tendency who are amazing with routines. And I am constantly amazed and impressed by the C personality's natural inclination to stay organized and how they execute their plans so very well. Ironically, a few of those people have told me how easy it is to get and stay organized, and some of them have gotten frustrated with me when I laugh at that. But here's one of my favorite stories that, about that subject. I help all kinds of business people. And one time I was talking with a coach and her client about who she served. And the client, as a blogger, wanted to help hot mess moms get their lives together. But in our short conversation, I knew that was not her ideal person. I asked her why she thought she could help a hot mess mom. And she started talking about how she can teach them to be organized, stay on top of homework, even with kids and a business. And the coach and I started laughing because we both tend toward that hot mess mom arena. And I asked her if she even had, I mean, her home was beautiful. You could see it in the background. And I asked her if she even had any piles around her home. And she's like, "Oh, absolutely." So I asked if I could see one. And she picked up a stack of papers that wasn't even a quarter of an inch high and said, "See, I have piles." And the coach and I laughed again. And then the coach, using her camera, showed her one of her own piles that was at least a foot high. And the woman was clearly shocked. So when I asked the client about how she felt, this was the fun part. I said, "Okay, tell me how you feel when you vacuum and all the lines on the carpet are perfect and all going the same way." And you could just see the absolute joy on her face, while the coach was looking at both of us like we'd lost our minds. At that point, I looked at the coach and I was like, I told the client that that coach had no idea what I was talking about because that had never happened in her entire life. And honestly, folks, the only reason I know about it is because my mother loved that as well. It's not something that's natural to me. Now, before you get mad, please know that we did talk with this woman and we hashed out her perfect client, which happened to be someone who, like her, was extremely organized and put together, as most C personality women are, before children. Then the children come, and the level of chaos requires a shift in thinking, shift in expectations, and a shift in activities. And that was who she was ideally suited to help. And the thing is, they deserve and need just as much help as the hot mess mom. But trying to help the hot mess mom, she was pursuing a client she couldn't even relate to because moldy cheese and sprouted potatoes in the pantry were not, or a sink full of dishes was an anomaly for her, not a regular practice, if that makes sense. And the routines that are going to help each of them thrive are different. and both deserve to find their happy place with their routines, as all of us do. So here's the question. How are your routines? Do you love them? If so, I am so happy for you. If they could use a bit of tweaking, I'd love to help you with that. This month, I've reinstated my discovery calls, which are 15-minute chats to see how I can help you with whatever area of your life you need assistance in. We might resolve your issue in that 15-minute conversation. We might schedule a one-time strategy session or something more in depth. But I assure you that whatever we chat about, you're going to feel better about yourself and your life when we're finished. And you'll have some next steps to help you live better based on your personality, rather than someone else's plan that may or may not work for you. So go to the Moving Toward Better homepage and sign up for your discovery call to start living better as soon as possible. As always, if you like what you've heard, please share and subscribe. And until next time, keep moving toward better, whatever that looks like for you. Love you all. At Moving Toward Better, it's our mission to help you unlock a fantastic life, powered by what's unique and authentically you. To learn how we can help you in your quest, head over to movingtowardbetter.com to check it out, or use the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, thanks for being you, and have a great day. Love you all.